Okay, let's dive right into this. Because honestly, what we're looking at today is an urgent breakdown of a massive, massive meteorological and economic threat. We've got an alert that just dropped for the year 2026. And look, if history is any indicator at all, this is a looming crisis you simply cannot afford to ignore. So, welcome to this explainer on the 2026 Super El Niño. So, take a close look at this number right here, 66%. That is the exact probability, calculated by top scientists, of a super El Niño forming between November 2026 and January 2027. Now, we aren't just talking about, a little extra rain or a slightly milder summer. No, we're talking about an ocean temperature anomaly of 1.8 to 2.5 degrees Celsius above the historical average. That's huge.
And listen, this isn't just some random guess. This specific alert came out of a windowless room in Maryland by scientists at NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They are literally the planet's most respected climate authority. They've got this massive fleet of weather satellites and ocean buoys just scattered across all 5 continents, monitoring the global oceans 24/7. So when NOAA hits the publish button on an alert like this, the entire world needs to pay attention.
All right, Section 1, the looming threat and these massive oceanic shifts. So why is this specific 2026 warning so absolutely terrifying for the global economy, especially for a major agricultural powerhouse like Brazil? Well, think about going to the beach. You get there at, say, 9 a.m., right? The sun is blazing hot, you're sweating. But when you actually jump in the water, it's freezing. Then you go back in the late afternoon. The air has cooled down a bit, but the water is actually much warmer. That is what scientists call thermal inertia. See, water takes an incredibly long time to heat up and cool down, and the Pacific Ocean is the largest body of water on Earth. Its temperature is usually incredibly stable. So a 2.5-degree shift across the entire Pacific, that is a massive, unnatural, and bizarrely high shock to our global system.
Let's move to Section 2 and see exactly how the Pacific flips, creating global climate chaos.
We really need to understand the exact mechanics here. How does a weather anomaly on the literal other side of the world fundamentally break your local economy? Well, imagine the Pacific Ocean as just this giant bathtub, stretching all the way from Peru to Australia. Normally, trade winds blow across this bathtub, pushing the warm surface water over to Australia. That leaves nice, cool, nutrient-rich water right near Peru, which creates amazing fishing conditions. But during an El Niño, those trade winds suddenly weaken, and all that warm water, it sloshes all the way back toward the Americas. We are talking about billions upon billions of liters of warm water flowing back. As it heats up near South America, it evaporates, forming these towering clouds that completely rewire global wind and rain patterns. I mean, it literally turns the world's climate upside down.
Which brings us to Section 3, historical proof. Let's look at past economic crises. You have to know, NOAA doesn't just throw around the term Super El Niño lightly. Over the last 50 years, this intense classification has only been used a handful of times. And every single time it happened, without exception, it triggered a massive economic and social crisis in Brazil. Let's just walk through the historical timeline here. In 1982, the temperature anomaly exceeded 3 degrees. The northeast of Brazil saw absolutely devastating droughts, while the south essentially drowned. The city of Blumenau was underwater for 32 days, and 64% of Santa Catarina's industrial park just ground to a total halt. Then, jump to 1997, a massive 4-degree anomaly. A recent study in the journal Science actually revealed that this specific event erased 5% of the Brazilian GDP over the following 5 years. Half a trillion reais in today's money, just gone. Poof. Finally, 2015, a 2.3-degree anomaly. The corn harvest plummeted, general inflation spiked to 10.67%, and the economy plunged into a brutal 3.5% recession. Moving on to Section 4, Ocean to your wallet, the domino effect.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that this isn't just meteorology. This is an exact chain reaction that travels from the Pacific Ocean directly to your bank account. Here's exactly how the dominoes fall. Step 1, the ocean warms. Step 2, climate chaos causes severe droughts in places like the Northeast and floods in the South, destroying massive crop yields, particularly things like corn and beans. Step 3, because there's less food, food inflation spikes violently. Step 4, to control that inflation, the central bank is forced to hike interest rates, the Selic rate in Brazil. And finally, Step 5, with those skyrocketing interest rates, consumer credit completely freezes, people stop spending, and businesses fail. It's a straight line. Let's bring this down to the micro level for a second and look at a hypothetical example, but one based on real market mechanics. Meet San Antonio, a hardworking local bakery owner. Before El Niño, he runs a perfectly healthy business providing for his neighborhood, clearing a solid 30,000 reals in monthly profit. But then, the climate shock hits. Global wheat prices shoot up 25%. His energy costs rise. Suddenly, his ingredient costs jump from 120,000 to 145,000 reals. Rent and energy climb from 40,000 to 46,000. And because credit is totally frozen across the country and general inflation is so high, his everyday customers have to pull back on spending, dropping his demand by 15%. In just a few short months, that healthy profit margin is completely wiped out. It goes negative, forcing him into toxic, high-interest bank debt just to keep the lights on for his community.
And this bakery story, it brilliantly illustrates what actually happened in 2015. This isn't just theory, guys. Look at these hard facts from the last Super El Niño. The entire corn harvest dropped 19.1%. And while general inflation hit that 10.67% mark we talked about, everyday food items just exploded. Potatoes, for example, surged by almost 70%. No joke. As interest rates rose, the volume of new credit given to families dropped by over 15%. No one was buying cars, no one was renovating homes. This widespread credit freeze led to record corporate bankruptcies, including massive established companies like the Santa Helena Sugar Mill. They'd been operating for nearly 30 years before this shock pushed them straight into restructuring.
Let's look at Section 5, Defensive Moves and Financial Preparation.
Okay, now that we understand the gravity of the data, we need to pivot to solutions. Major banks, we're talking Citi, BTG, Bank of America, they are already pricing in this massive inflation shock for the coming years. And we need to do exactly the same thing. This brings us to a really crucial question posed by risk analyst Nassim Taleb. Are you the Thanksgiving turkey, or are you anti-fragile? Think about the turkey. Day 1, the farmer feeds it. Day 2, same thing. By day 364, the turkey feels completely secure, assuming that the past perfectly predicts the future. It is totally blind to the butcher's axe coming on day 365. The biggest risk here is assuming that just because things are calm right now, a crisis isn't forming. But hey, you don't have to be the turkey. You can be anti-fragile, meaning you actually become stronger from the shock. Let's look at the Brazilian energy sector to see this in action. Brazil relies super heavily on hydroelectric dams. During an El Niño, rainfall plummets in the north, and those dams can lose 60% of their generation capacity. To keep the country running, they have to turn on these incredibly expensive thermal power plants. And guess who pays for that? You do. Notice those extra red tariff flags on your bill? That was a 13% extra cost passed straight to consumers in July 2015 and 10% in January 2016. So, the crucial point is this. You absolutely must develop a producer mindset. Don't just be the consumer who blindly pays the higher electric bill when the shock hits. Protect your financial portfolio by owning a piece of the companies that actually hold the axe. I'm talking about companies in anti-fragile sectors, like energy, that have the power and the mechanisms to pass those rising costs straight along to the broader market. And look, if you're operating on a tight budget right now, a highly practical step over the next few months is to build a mini stockpile of the non-perishable daily goods your family consumes before these agricultural spikes hit the supermarket shelves. The absolute biggest risk you can take right now is simply believing this won't happen just because the sky is clear today. The data is all laid out, the historical precedent is undeniable, and the alert has officially been issued. So the only question left is, when the storm hits in 2026, will you be the turkey or will you be holding the axe?